Welcome to the 1000 Hours Outside podcast. My name is Ginny Urich, the host of the 1000 Hours Outside podcast and founder of 1000 Hours Outside. And I am here today with a real life comedian. This is exciting. And author of a book that I enjoyed tremendously. Pam Lobley, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So let me read a little bit of your bio. You started your career as a comedic actress. This is fantastic. You're the first comedic actress I've ever talked to. You performed your material in clubs and theaters all over New York City. You've written several plays.
Oh, nice.
Humor columns have appeared in newspapers and online. And you're the author of 2 books, Better Living Through Chaos. You definitely know you're a mom win. And then this book, this newer book, Why Can't We Just Play? What I did when I realized my kids were way too busy. And Pam, you never know what to expect when someone pops you a book in the mail. But I thoroughly enjoyed, I laughed, I was snorting, I was crying. I'm not even a crier. This book is truly one of the best I've ever read. It's so relatable. It's so funny. You hit on so many of the key parts of motherhood that I think all of us are struggling with. So way to go.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's like the best thing really that I could hear, is because when I wrote this book, I wrote it out of my own place of trying to figure things out, being frustrated, needing to laugh about, all the crazy things that go on. And to know that, it hits the mark and it's relatable to people is the best thing I could hope for. So.
Yeah, it really does. I enjoyed it so much. In fact, I was posting about it on social media ahead of time, and I never do that. I was laughing, kids probably thought I was so odd, sitting there laughing away. So Pam, what was your path to this book?
So, we were living in New York City, like you said. I was, working in the theater and writing comedy. But when we had kids, we wanted to live in the suburbs, and we got a house. And, the first few years of having kids were so great. Those years of, preschool, I was working part-time as a writer, but I was mostly home with them. And, it was great. It was everything exhausting that baby and toddler years are, as we know. But then we got into the grade school years, and like the engine train of activities just took over our life, without really knowing it. It starts so innocently, where you think, well, oh, this will be it. Let's do soccer after school, or my kids want to do karate. But everything has all these time commitments. Karate is twice a week, and you've got to progress through the belts. And then soccer is this. And before I knew it, we were just back to back activities. Racing around. School would be ending, and it would be like rush through your homework because now we have to get to the next thing. And I remember one time my husband and I collapsed in our chairs at 9:15 after we'd finally gotten through all the activities and the bed and the bath and the whole thing. And we just looked at each other and said, we've got to be doing something wrong. This doesn't feel right. But yet when we looked around, everybody else was doing the exact same thing. So where do you go for clarity in that situation, Anyway, one night when I was, and keep in mind, as I'm describing this, my kids were 7 and 10. They're not even they're young.
Right. They're not high schoolers. Right.
They're not high school. So anyway, I was tucking my oldest one in one night, and you know how you do with you're taking way too long with stories and prayers and kisses. It's going on forever. And suddenly he started crying, and he said, Mom, I never have time to play at 10 years old. And I was like, what? Because I had thought that I was doing such a great job of giving him playtime. When I would pick them up at school, we would stay for an hour afterwards so that they could play. I was not that let's rush home, and they played as long as they wanted to with their friends. And then, he wanted to do soccer. I didn't make him do soccer. He wanted to do band and all these things. And so to hear that he didn't have time to play, first of all, I was surprised. And secondly, I felt, okay, officially the worst mother ever. It doesn't even give her 10-year-old boy enough time to play. really made me consider, well, what is play then? If
Mm,
play isn't soccer games and karate and whatever, then what is it? And what he was really missing was that independent free play, where
yeah.
parents are not telling them what to do. Self-directed, unstructured, independent free play. And that, and I'm sure and your listeners know too, that is just being taken out of every aspect of
Mm,
childhood these days. Recess is 22 minutes long if they're in school, 22 minutes.
mm,
And then after school, many times there's an activity. There's not, let's just go to a playground and run around. And I think the same thing is true on the weekends. So,
mm.
and I think every kid is different. Like, I know kids who thrive with lots of structure, but mine did not. And once I realized that, like, all the whining and pushback and behavior I was getting made sense because they weren't happy. They didn't want to get in
Wow.
the car and go to the next thing. They just wanted to stay home and build a pillow fort, or
Yeah.
make up games with their stuffed animals, or like stuff that is, quote, not like enriching, haha, in
Right.
our
It's not,
society,
it's like
right?
French class or tuba lessons or whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So anyway, at that point, I kind of reconsidered and just I gave them the whole summer off. I asked them, all right, well, what do you guys think? You want to just do nothing all summer? And they were all over it. And
Wow.
so that's what we did. And as you know from the book, it was not without its hurdles, because when you decide to do that, you do face a lot of boredom. The
Hmm.
kids have that, I'm bored, and what's the first thing we do when we're bored? We go whine to mom
Yep.
or
Yep.
fight with your sibling.
All right. Right.
So
So you chronicled your summer here in this book, and lovingly called it a 1950s summer, which I thought was actually fantastic. I loved all the sort of history that you wove in through there, and I had written down. I have so many notes here because I love the book so much. But one of the notes I had written down was that you had talked about, um, these older books and magazines and sort of what they advice they give, and one of them was to tie an alarm clock to your child's bike or wagon, so that they would know when to come back. And I thought, oh, it's so funny to think about how things used to be.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. One of the, raising kids in those days, they were free range kids, like we would say
Hmm.
today. You went outside and you came back when it was dark or when you were hungry or
When
whatever.
your alarm clock
And
went off that your mom tied to
when
your
the alarm
bike.
clock on, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In many ways, it was so much easier for moms
Yeah.
because you weren't expected to entertain your child all the time.
Hmm.
And I think that's a pressure that we have.
Yes. So what I found throughout your book, woven from beginning to end, Pam, were these feelings that parents have that I think are fairly overarching, that we're struggling with, a lot of them. So that was one of the some of the notes I have here. So I thought maybe we could go through some of these feelings, these overarching feelings. So one of the ones you talk about is fear. You say, I knew we were too busy all the time. I was sick of the pace and pressure that dictated family life and the constant feeling that if you let up for 1 minute, your child will fall behind. That is a cardinal sin of parenting today in the middle class, letting your child fall behind. So you talk a lot about fear, about the other kids that go to John Hopkins Brainy Kids summer camp. I mean, this is funny stuff. But we have this fear that our children will fall behind. So can we talk about that, and you know, how did it go for you when you did have an entire summer where you sort of let your kids fall behind, quote unquote?
Yeah. So the first thing I think that helped me do is identify that maybe that as real as that fear is, it's also sort of irrational in many
Mm,
ways. Like what does that mean? Every kid is different, and so to sort of talk myself back from that fear and say, I know my kids and I'm capable of doing what's right for them. And it
mm,
might not look what's right for another kid or another family. But I can't let that bother me, because if it does, it will automatically derail the clear vision that I have of my own children and family. And so, but I do, and the thing about that fear, I feel like, is it continually resurfaces. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So you're at a great place where your kid's having a good summer, whatever. 3 years later, you're in high school, and all of a sudden, everybody else is, fill in the blank, playing on the varsity team, taking AP bio, or whatever your personal things that are making you feel insecure. And then the first thing we do is question ourselves. I must have done something wrong. I
Mm,
must be doing something wrong. How come he isn't doing that, or she isn't doing that? It's that comparison trap. It's so hard.
yeah.
But
I
in
mean,
but
oh, go ahead.
go ahead. I was just going to say, but I think that being able to look at my kids for who they were, and our family, to be able to give them what they need, and also serve the family unit as a whole. Like, how are we going to be a fun, happy family in our own unique way?
Mm,
Um, that helped me to calm down and take the summer as it came. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Like, feel comfortable with, yeah, well, you know what, we're not doing that. And
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah,
it's
I do
great.
love that. I love that unique aspect of it. There's with 1000 hours outside, there's over it just breached 500,000 people use the hashtag 1000 hours outside on Instagram, and it just, tipped over 500,000 of those. And I do love that. It is a unique expression of your family when you choose to sort of step out of the way that everyone else is doing it, and that adds to uniqueness, and variety is the spice of life. And I think that is something to be prized and something to be aware of, that you're providing for your kids and your family. I think fear goes along with pressure. So pressure was something that came up a lot in your book too. You said you can now excel at everything. You can have a prettier patio, six-pack abs, a fresh scented sofa, a high-performing retirement fund, a meaningful marriage, a dry basement, well-behaved children, and a robust gum health. I mean, this is fantastic. But then you say, in fact, if you don't have all of these things, it's your own darn fault. You're probably just lazy. So you talk about how we have just ramped up motherhood, ramped up parenting. Where is this pressure coming from?
I honestly don't really know. I mean, I feel like probably a big part of it is the media, because like all those things, like, gum health and fresh scented sofas, we're fed that all the time. You could be
Mhm.
better, you could do better. And if you're not, what's wrong with you? Because the resources are everywhere. So there's that pressure. And then I guess, honestly, it may be just, I think social media has exasperated it. When I wrote this book, there wasn't really a big social media presence. And I think it's actually made things worse,
Hmm.
honestly. The comparison game and the feeling that, we're all not measuring up. But yeah, I think too, in some ways it also comes from a place of love. We just want the best for our kids.
Yeah.
So that's where I think that's the root of the guilt or the fear, which is like, well, am I doing the best? Because I love these crazy people so much that I would lie down in front of a moving train for them. So if I would do
Right.
that, should I also make sure they take AP bio? Should I, like it right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It
so
translates. Yeah.
so it's just, it becomes a big pressure cooker.
Yeah, for sure. You talk about feeling lonely. Um, I actually loved this sentence, and you talked about a bit before we started about possibly doing an online book club, which I think is such a cool idea. Maybe you can mention that here. But you said, I often feel alone. This loneliness gets blamed on suburbia, but really, I think it's just motherhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a big statement.
I think one of the things that I think happens, when you have a newborn and you complain to your other newborn friends, they're not sleeping, or they're going right through their diapers. Like, I need a better diaper solution, or whatever. Everybody shares. But as your kids get older, step by step, certain things you don't want to share. It's embarrassing. Everybody else's kid is potty trained and yours still isn't.
Hmm.
Or everybody else is reading chapter books by the end of first grade and yours isn't. And, you know, and so gradually, maybe you don't reach out or mention things or share because you're nervous or embarrassed, when actually you're probably totally in the field of normal, but now you know, you don't want to say it or you're worried. And it gets even worse the older they get because the problems get.
Mm,
So, you know, if your kid is the victim of bullying or is the bully, because that happens, or, you know, or is having a bigger problem, you really don't want to say it because now you're
yeah,
embarrassed. And also you're protecting their privacy. You know,
right.
I can remember when my, on a lighter note, my oldest son was in fourth grade. I was like, does he have BO? I was like, wait, fourth graders have like
It
need.
starts earlier than you would think.
It really does. And that was like a huge surprise to me. And I remember saying to my friends after school, I was like, okay, does anybody else's kids smell? And half of them were like, oh my gosh, yes. And all the moms who had older kids were like, oh yeah, stick a deodorant for fourth grade. That's where it starts, you know?
Hmm.
So, but if what if I had been too embarrassed to say that? What if I had been, you know, it would have been one more little link of thing, or one more sort of distance between me and a community that would help me. Instead,
Yeah.
I would be, you see. So I think that's where a lot of the loneliness comes. And I think that the having, like you talk about having your families that you adventure with and your nature families. I can imagine the community in
Mm,
that time when you see each other's kids and you recognize, you see how their crazy kids act, and you
yeah.
realize, oh, you know what, kids are nuts, and that's what's great about them. That is
Right.
what's great, you
Right.
know.
Right. And it is hard. It is hard to build relationships. It's hard to carve out the time. It's hard to overlap your schedules. It's hard. There becomes a lot more layers to relationships once you become a parent and you have differing age kids. You know, if your kids are 3 years apart, you know, you're trying to find a family that maybe has similar boys, right? That has the same sort of thing. And so it's just, it's tricky.
It's really tricky. And I can remember meeting, we'd like meet a family, and I would think, oh, that mom is so cool. And I like, well, they have girls who play sports, so we'll never be friends with them because I have boys who
Mm,
don't play sports. So
yeah.
like, I don't know how we're ever going to see each other.
Right.
It's
Right.
kind of true.
Yeah, there's all those layers there. So you talked a little bit about, I mean, your book is so funny. It's such a bright spot. It's such a breath of fresh air. And you talked about possibly doing a Zoom book club. Tell us about that sort of dream and vision.
Yeah. So my vision is that, you know, we can meet on Zoom, which means it can be, you can be reading it from anywhere. And we can read and talk and kind of share our own experiences or our own, you know, issues without judgment, without, you know, you're not, you're in a safe space because nobody knows who you are. I mean, you're
Right.
in the Zoom club. But also then to just have that freedom to just be honest, and honestly, even to just listen to other people. You know, have you ever heard
Mm,
somebody else say, like, my kid will not eat? Like, when I was listening to one of your podcasts, you said, like, your kids would not go to to the grandparents.
mm-hmm.
And that was such a great moment for me because my kids they didn't have that, but they would have something else, which was like, everybody's kids love grandma and grandpa. What is with my, and I would have the same thing, like everybody's kids ate McDonald's. They would never eat McDonald's, and we'd be on a road trip and I would have to pack like 8 hours worth of sandwiches because they refuse to eat fast food. So it's just little things like that that make you realize there's nothing wrong with my family.
Mm,
Everybody has their things, and it really helps to get perspective when you
yeah.
hear other people say, you know, their quirks.
Yeah, I would love to be a part of your Zoom book club. I think it's a fantastic idea. Some of the other feelings: judged, obliged to a standard, intimidated, depressed. Depressed was one. You talked about sort of being depressed and overwhelmed. Um, I liked this. It was shattering to realize how much work it would take to get the house in the kind of shape I was envisioning. So you sort of talked about being like the 1950s housewife, and but you don't really care if things are messy, so you're kind of climbing out of a pit, right? That's how I feel sometimes too. Um, you know, so just that feeling of overwhelm, and then tired, You can't,
Yeah.
got brought up a lot. I think, I think something that's a misnomer, and it's actually sad. So people are going to hear this and maybe be kind of sad. But you think that as your kids get older, you'll be less tired. And you're waiting for that. And maybe in some sense you are. It is different when you're sleeping through the night, but
Definitely.
it just becomes really busy
Yeah.
as
And
they
it
get
also
older.
is very emotional. Your kids need you. And I feel like this is a thing that we also don't really talk about. Like our society is so involved in self-actualization. Are oh my are you getting what you want? Are you fulfilled? Are you doing the things you want? And we
Mm,
don't necessarily talk about who needs you. Like I remember
mm,
when my oldest was like 2 or 3 and my youngest was a newborn and growing up and whatever. And of course the baby is getting most of the attention because feeding and whatever. And um and then at some point my oldest one was acting out and I realized that he just missed one-on-one with me, and the only way that he could get that was for me to use the one free hour a day I had, which was when my younger one was napping, and
mm,
totally devote it to him. And I did
yeah,
it, and it
yeah,
about killed me. But this is the thing, like, what is there to say? You're the mom and you're needed.
yeah.
And that's like, and then but again society is like, well, what about you? What
Mm,
wasn't that your time to read a book or have a facial? Don't you need some, it's just, but
mm.
honestly, if you really are going to do the thing that's most important, that little adorable creature needs you. And so and I used to joke to my friends, I was like, well, there's no problem that can't be solved by me making a personal sacrifice. So whatever the problem is,
Wow.
if I just give something up in favor of doing for them, it'll be fine. And
Mm.
so, and I bet you are experiencing the same thing because, with 5 kids, I'm sure they just all have a different way of needing you.
Yeah,
And so,
it is this bizarre thing of, so we and we homeschool too, so we're around each other
yeah,
a lot, but we had moved, we were living in this house, and my husband was working remotely. This is before COVID, and he worked in our bedroom. That was the only sort of space that we had, and there was this opening, like this window that went in, and it was open. We probably could have gotten it filled in with glass, but he was like, it's too loud, I can't work up here, and this was sort of his career trajectory. So we ended up moving, to try and find a better fit. And we moved to this house that had this massive basement. I mean, it was a ranch and it had this huge basement, all these rooms, and he had an office and we had play space. And I was like, this is great, Pam. I'm like, these kids are going to be playing down in the basement the whole time, and I'm going to be upstairs, getting things done and cleaning. And and then they're all right there, And so we had read right after we moved. It was just, they're just on top of you like little magnets. And we read right after we moved that no matter how big your home is it 1,800 square feet? Is it 800 square feet? Is it 10,000 square feet? That primarily you spend time within 400 square feet. It's because everybody wants to be, the kids want to be together. They want to be with you. And so, that is draining.
yeah.
It's
And
draining.
it's also so beautiful. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you say, like, the minute you said we had this huge basement and I thought they'd be down there, I just started laughing because I knew exactly where we were going. And yet,
Yeah.
who cares? Where's mom? That's where I
Yeah.
want to be.
Where's mom? And
So
I love your sentiment. You put, sometimes I could not appreciate the memories I was creating at the time. I was too tired. That's so relatable. You say, I figured I would enjoy them one day and be grateful for the hours I spent creating them. I was right.
100%, and it's so true. And I have those memories and they have those memories. And, the thing is, you are creating a family life. As your children grow, it's your opportunity to create whatever that family life looks like, for dinner, for homeschooling, for vacations, for playtime. It's all up to you, which of course is completely exhausting, but also very freeing and exciting. So,
Mhm.
but in doing that, I did feel like I really got my investment back. You know what I mean? It was
Mm.
100% worth all the fatigue. Uh, Sorry, I shook my head and my headphones fell out.
You're
It
totally
was,
fine, and I can go back and cut it
yeah.
out.
So anyway, it was just worth whatever sacrifice that I
Yeah.
made to have that, because you don't get, and that's another theme of the book, is that you're never getting their childhood back. They don't get it back and you don't get it back. So
Mm.
making those choices, then when you have that perspective, becomes a little easier,
Yeah.
because and in terms of being tired, I'll just make this promise: once they go to college, it is, you can rest.
All right. All right. You just got to make it 18 years longer if you have more than one kid.
Oh,
That's
definitely.
fantastic. Great to know, Pam. I love it. That's, you know what though, and you can also maybe work in the ways that you want to work too. I definitely have had periods of times where I felt jealous, and this was a theme in your book too, of jealous of other people's situations, and maybe they had less kids or they were able to afford daycare or these different situations, and I felt a lot of times held back. But I think the time comes for all of us. And it may not be the time that you think it should be or you want it to be, but eventually the time is there, and those things balance out a little bit
They do.
more.
They absolutely do. And I think that like one of the keys that has helped me to really be happy is to understanding where I am and appreciating that situation at the time. You know, like they say, bloom where you're planted. And
Yes.
so, and now, my kids are basically out. One is fully adult living on his own. One just graduated college. And I do have a lot of time to work. And
Mm,
it's very enjoyable. It feels
yeah.
fun. It feels like I waited for this and now I got it. But
Yeah.
I also can say, but I had that amazing time,
Yeah. Yeah.
where like you said, I often felt jealous, like, ugh, I only had 2 hours to work today. And
Right.
it was
Right.
more,
Yeah, and
but
you see these other people that are climbing the ladder and they're accomplishing things, and you feel like you're not.
yeah.
But times do change. I read, actually, the thing that sort of shifted things for me as I had read this book. I think it's called On Being There. It's about motherhood in the first 3 years, which are so unbelievably exhausting and draining. And it
Mhm.
said, mothers can do it all, just not all at the same time. I was like, oh,
I
that's really
Yeah,
profound.
really profound. And I totally subscribe to that.
Hmm.
You know, you're going to have, I mean, I am pretty impressed with how much work you get done already, but you have many years to do a lot of really interesting things. And another way to look at that is, when you get to that point, think how rich your mind and your soul will be because of these years. You're going to bring so much more to any work that you do because
Mm.
of what you've just lived and experienced.
Aw, and isn't that opposite, I think, of what a lot of people think, which they think, well, I've been out of the job market for 15 years. What do I have to offer? But you have to offer a hard work ethic. You have to offer flexibility, a sense of humor, all of these different things, multitasking.
Yeah,
There are a
people
lot of,
management skills.
yes, for sure. For sure. Okay. I love this sentence. So you talk about feeling confused and unprepared. So there was a story in there about how I think one of your sons or your boys had friends over, and one of them had a cell phone. So you
Mhm.
say, but they were younger. So you said one of
Yeah,
the friends had a cell phone. So you say, I hovered in the other room feeling confused and unprepared. I knew there should be some rules about this, but I hadn't thought a darn thing through. I had filed cell phone usage in my brain under stuff to think about when they're teens and was totally adrift. So,
yeah.
this is a theme that comes up too, that we don't really know what we're doing.
We don't know what we're doing. And I feel like things hit us, like we always think we have more time to learn about it. But stuff comes at the kids and us at earlier and earlier phases. And so it is really hard to be constantly prepared. Again, that's why I feel like the community of moms is so important.
Mm,
Because I can't, when things change so quickly, you can't go find a book on it. The book hasn't even been written yet. You need to go hang out with your mom friends and say, like, what are you guys doing about cell phones, or who did this, or what? And that's when someone will say, well, we got this great blocking device, or we did this, or we have this rule, and you know what I mean? And you can, or you find out that, gosh, everybody's kid is on a cell phone way more than yours, and you can feel kind of good about it.
Yeah,
But
sure.
but it is, I think honestly, I feel like that still happens even now through the teen years, is that all of a sudden they come home and say something like, well, I want to do this, or I already did that. And you think, what? I thought that was like something that happened later. It's happening now. And then, and when they're driving, all of a sudden, the minute they drive, it's like, well, let's take a 3-hour trip somewhere. It's like, wait, what? Like, you were scared to go around the block. Now you want to go to the beach? Like, I'm not ready for that. So it is, I feel like that's a theme of parenting, is just constantly being blindsided. And I think, I think it's, our kids grow up so fast. Society and consumerism put so much pressure on them to grow up fast. And I definitely feel like the gatekeeper of, or I was the gatekeeper of, like, let's slow it down.
Yeah.
Why are we jumping to that? That will be there. We can, we can slow down a little.
Yeah. And it's interesting because in the process of slowing down, it gives the parent a little bit more time to adjust. I mean, maybe that's even part of the reason to slow down, is I can't keep up. I can't keep up with the changes.
Totally agree. Yeah. And I also wonder too, if the kids don't appreciate setting of the boundaries. If you're a teen and you're supposed to be home at midnight and you have to leave just when maybe things are getting a little out of control, maybe that feels good. Sorry guys, but I'll get in trouble if I don't go home now. And it gives them a safe out. And I actually, they complain and they hate us for those rules, but I honestly think it just creates a really great safe space for them.
I think that it shows that we care. My midwife has always said, someday they may come back and ask, why didn't we restrict the screens a little bit more? Why didn't we save their childhood? And so I do think about that somewhat often, that in time they do get it, and they understand that it was a sacrifice, and understand that it was hard to possibly craft a life that looked different than most of the neighbors, but they know that it was for them.
I'll tell you something else about that. You're teaching them a powerful lesson, which is go your own way, listen to your own heart. By modeling that, because the world is full of so much conformity and pressure. Like, this is like what we're talking about, is how we feel so pressured to do this or be that. And if we can model for our children, you don't have to do what everyone else is doing. Play to your strengths, play to your desires, and look, it's okay. Like, things will turn out well. You don't have to be afraid of doing that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it was interesting because one of the things that you had talked about was that the kids were getting pressured. So they were coming home with the sheets. They were coming home with the sign-up sheets. And I do remember that as part of school, everyone's trying to sort of sell their thing. They want their program to continue or their program to be successful. I remember it very specifically with fundraisers. They would come in with this huge program, and you could win this, and you could win this, and you could win that. And so you want to be involved. And so if this has now seeped into other areas, like you got to join this sports club and you got to join this after school activity, that kids, especially young kids, I think you were talking about that maybe even with your elementary schoolers, that they're getting the marketing pitch, at school to join these different activities. And so you're trying to teach them sort of how to sort through, what do we pick, what do we don't pick?
Yeah. For my oldest one, he wanted to do anything just because he wanted to see his friends. He was extremely social. And since nobody was just running around playing in the neighborhood with free play, the only way to see other kids was to sign them up for activities. So that's where we got into trouble, because he signed up for everything just to see friends. And so then to scale back and go, but you realize you don't really like that. That's not really fun for you. So let's just stick with the things that are fun. My younger one is not that same way. He's much more discerning just by nature. So he would just be like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not. He was a little easier in that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, the pressure is there.
Yeah. And the golden age of childhood is something that sort of, that you talked about in there. And other people are talking about this too, that there's this sweet spot. It's like elementary school, you know, heading into middle school maybe. And you stated a study done in Britain that said childhood ends at 11 now. Most parents believe that when kids reach the age of 11, they're done with toys. And you know, but you had such a good reminder that doors close all the time, that things end, you know, and you're through that season. And so we don't want to rush it.
We don't want to rush it. And I honestly think, going back to the idea of protecting your kids from the pressure, that they don't necessarily want childhood to end at 11. I was working in the elementary schools a few years ago. I worked as an aide in the classroom. And one year I was in 6th grade, and I overheard this girl. It was on Friday and everybody was getting their backpacks on or whatever. And she kind of like huffed and she said, I don't have any free time all weekend. I'm talking about 6th grade. She listed her schedules. She had some ball game Friday afternoon. Then she had another different sports thing Saturday morning. Then she had a birthday party Saturday afternoon. And then Sunday she had, and I was, I was just overhearing it by happenstance, but I got so sad because here she was actually complaining to a friend, like, ugh, I have such a busy weekend. And I thought to myself, does her mom know that she feels like this? Would she even be able to say, would she even understand and be able to say, I need some more downtime. I
Yeah.
need some more free time. I don't think she could even articulate that, and probably feels like this is what my age group does. Because if she looks around, that is what they're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's really, I just think that it's up to us to keep them, their childhood going as long as is appropriate for them.
I love that. I love that. And you talk about what are we really looking for? You said many of the reasons I wanted children: lingering over books, laughing fits at bedtime, meandering days of outside play. We never had time to make that happen because you're talking about just steering through the busyness. And I loved what you talked about, the memories at a family cabin that you went to year after year, and your parents were there, and cousins were there. That's sort of what you were really looking for. Can you talk to us about some of those summer memories? There's a really sweet part of your book, and then you talked about how your dad got
Yeah.
dementia as time went on, and but you had such a foundation built at that cabin.
Yes. So we started doing like an extended family vacation when my kids were babies, basically, because we all live kind of far apart. So it was a time when we could all be in, and I think a lot of families do this, one big
Hmm.
house for a week, wherever. And
Yeah.
it's a great way to connect. And I can remember, talking about like comparing yourself to other people. We only get a certain amount of vacation a year. And
Right.
so that's what we used ours for. We weren't also going to Arizona or Disney, or you know what I mean?
Mm,
So I can remember for sometimes feeling like, we're just going to do the same thing, until I realized the value of that, and as
yeah.
the kids got older, the relationships they had with their grandparents and their cousins that they wouldn't otherwise have had.
Yeah.
And the feeling really of just constantly returning to that same place. It's like, the wheel just keeps circling back to this place. And this year things are different.
Yeah.
Last year I wasn't allowed to ride my bike alone, and this year I am. And this year, and the whole like just relationships that we had. And I think too, not just for the kids, but for my parents to be
Yeah.
able to be around the kids year after year and celebrate, whatever milestones they were going through. It just, like I said, it's kind of exhausting, but you end up just creating a whole fabric of memories and relationships that can never be destroyed.
Mm,
And yes, and then my dad got dementia, and my parents ended up moving to North Carolina, near where that uh,
mm,
house is. My sister lives near there too. And he was, for a long time, you could take him out. He had to be in a live-in home, but he would go there and he would remember that. Like,
wow.
as his mind was going and a lot of things he wasn't remembering, he would walk into that house and remember. And
Wow.
you would see the recognition of, oh, that's the clock in the kitchen. And oh, this is the same view from the deck we would see every summer. And it
Mm,
was so amazing to have, it was like a touchstone that we could
Yeah.
all be a part of. And I'm so really so grateful for all that time. Like honestly, it's such a gift for them and for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. And you say such a beautiful thing about it, that we only spent 1 or 2 weeks a year in that house, but its memories are as deep and permanent as anything in this world can be. Just a reminder that simple is okay, that if you choose to spend your vacation just at a house with extended family and you bike and you spend time at the beach, that is profoundly impacting for everyone,
Yeah.
for
And I
everyone.
think the kids never complained about going there. It was me that was like, well, shouldn't we be doing something more enriching or exciting? But believe me, just, riding your bikes in your pajamas, around the street was fun enough. Simple
Yeah.
as good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I love that you talk about the sort of reality, and one of the things that comes up a lot is the lawn. And the lawn was really funny. And you just brought it out in spots where I wasn't expecting it. I was just laughing. But sort of just the reality of kids is that, your husband wants to have a nice lawn, and you had a whole section in there about, ways, it was like ways to ruin the lawn. I don't even know if I wrote it down.
Yeah.
Oh, you said if you have a beautiful green lawn that you would like to destroy, I have some ideas for you. But this sort of reality that you hit on the reality, which is that when you have downtime and when you fill your life with nothing and take things out, there's a lot of sibling bickering, and they
Oh,
ruin the lawn, and you're having to take them on your errands. So I
yes.
love that you touch on the reality, um, the tech battleground, all of these types of things. But
Yeah.
is it worth it? Are all of those battles, are they worth it?
I think that's one of the things when people like if I when I talk about the book and people say, "Well, how did you do it?" They're envisioning some sort of perfect world where I somehow created this world where the children played happily on their own. Like all I did was set out a puzzle and they worked silently and happily for 90 minutes. And then they, marched into the kitchen and politely asked for vegetables for lunch. I mean, of course, it was nothing like that. And so I think that like I talk a lot in the book about lowering your expectations,
Mm.
so when you're going to have a lot of free time and kids underfoot all the time, you cannot expect to have a clean house or a perfect lawn or the TV is going to be on a certain amount of time each day and the kids are going to fight way more than you think they should be fighting. It's just if you can understand that that's normal instead of thinking that that's a sign of failure. I think that's the
Mm.
problem. Think like, oh well, they shouldn't be bickering, or I should have it should have been easy for me to put a balanced meal on the table tonight. After all, I'm
Mm.
quote unquote home all day. What was I actually doing that I forgot to defrost the chicken? But it's things are really hard, and I think especially when you choose to pay attention to people. So if I decide, you know, they're really fighting or we're stuck inside, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and we're going to play a board game. Or I'm going to stop what I'm
Mm.
doing and, you know, do whatever, try to mitigate the situation. Or, like you say, you have to bring them on errands. I mean, that is one of the most exhausting things of motherhood, I found.
Well, we were mothers. You and I were mothers before you could get groceries delivered. So,
Yeah.
born in the wrong era here. I remember thinking,
Absolutely.
what if I could just drive up and someone could bring it to my car? I mean, I remember thinking that for years and years. Sometimes you just need one thing. And so one time, Pam, I took like a mother's helper with me because we had three under three. I was like, I'm gonna take this girl to help me at the grocery store because I'm gonna pay her a little bit. It's so chaotic. And I thought afterward, she's probably never going to have children. It didn't even help. It was just such a mess. So, errands are tricky, but then, you talked about that they can be sometimes some of the fun things that we do together, and we can see it as that. And I like what you say about your expectations. It's about how you look at it. It's about giving yourself grace, um, for the day to day.
Yeah. I did try to, knowing that I would have to do errands, knowing that they would be bickering, I really just tried to lower my expectations and I mean that in a good way. Like, again, if I'm taking the pressure off, I need to take it off myself too. And obviously, bribery plays into it. Listen, if we do these errands, then we'll get a donut at Dunkin' on the way home, or
Yeah.
whatever the thing is that you're going to do. So and that would help. And but there's that long period where it's not so much now, like you say, because we get everything delivered, but
Right, right.
nothing. There was no Amazon.
People are going
Nothing.
to talk about, they're going to talk about the what was it? The 2000, you're like the 1950s summer. We'll talk about like the 2000s, the 2010s, I don't know, when you had to actually go in the grocery store with all your kids and they're all screaming
Absolutely.
and fighting and
Yeah. Or they're
yeah.
running up and they get out of the cart, then they're running up and down the aisle.
Like we had rules. It was like, you have to hold on to the cart. You have to hold my leg. You,
Yes.
it's
I
just a
remember one
mess.
time Jack he was out of the cart, and he must have been cranky. I don't know. He literally laid down in the checkout on the supermarket floor. And I was like, I don't even want to know what nasty things have been on. He laid
Oh.
down and just randomly shouted out everything that was red. So, balloon, book, like it was so random. And to me, I mean, I just love him and thought it was hilarious, but I could just feel the gazes of people around me thinking like, that poor woman, what is happening with her child?
Yes. So this is one for the history books, Pam, because people don't have to do this anymore. They can have it delivered or brought to their car. It's amazing. I love this part that you wrote in your book. You say, it can be lonely and frustrating to be home all day or to cut back on your own goals to be with your children, but everything has a cost. The more valuable things are, the more they cost. Spending time with your children costs a tremendous amount.
Yeah.
Wow. It's very encouraging because then you feel like it's normal, right? You feel like this is tremendously difficult, but that's normal because they're worth a lot.
Yeah. I think you had a long time, I don't know, at some point I read one of your Instagram posts and you were saying like something like, I'm tired because this is hard. I'm not tired because there's something wrong with me. I'm tired because this is really hard and I'm giving it 100%. I'm trying to leave it all on the field,
Yeah.
So, and I think that if we can just, like you say, give ourselves grace and go, yeah, this is really hard and it is tiring, but it's worth it and I'm choosing it. So I don't have
Yes.
to feel like somebody's making me do this. I want to be there for my kids and I want to stay up that extra half hour for listening to them or reading to them or whatever it is, because I recognize that it's important and I'll never get this time again. And somehow I'm making a deposit in the bank of love,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
my
Right.
account is growing.
Well, and
All
you
those,
talk about it pays dividends, but
yeah.
you can't, you don't really know what they are, and that's the tricky part. This has sort of come up a lot, but it's like we're in this instant gratification society, and so you expect for the reward to come then, or even if you're bored, one of the things that people talk about is, well, you can immediately turn to your phone or you can immediately turn on the television and you have this instant gratification. But if you take 15 minutes and put in a little bit more effort, maybe you could be doing something else that would provide a lot more for your sense of well-being and your life. So you write that in your book. Investing time and energy into my family will always pay dividends I can hardly imagine at the time.
It's true. And I think that, kids have instant gratification and so do parents. And I think that's one of the hard things, we get bored too. We get frustrated too. And we want to reach for the easy solution. So
Mm,
yeah, it is a constant challenge to choose the thing. But you make a good point, which if you could just invest a little bit more, you
mhm.
know what I mean? You just try something, you can make small adjustments that can really pay off.
Yeah,
And just by choosing that, it leads to a way better gratification than the instant
yeah.
gratification. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I love about your book, like I said at the very beginning, is it's so relatable. Even the sentence, the real reason for family vacations, not to relax, but to make memories. Just this reminder of, I just went on vacation and I came home and I feel like I need another vacation so that I can, refresh from that vacation. That was so exhausting. In fact, Pam, I had this, when our kids were young, my husband traveled a whole lot for work. And so my in-laws were camping and I thought, well, summer is so short. We had, 3 under 3, and I'm like, I want to take my kids. And there was these cabins that were about a mile away. And I'm taking them. I took them by myself and I loaded them up and I loaded up all the things and I loaded the car and I drove there and we're in this cabin and and I'm setting up these bunk beds and it's just kind of chaotic. And then in the middle of the night, the youngest one got croup. So we're in these cabins. We're sort of a mile away from my in-laws. I'm by myself. He's got this croup cough. He's 6 months. I got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old or 2-year-old and one. I don't know. So I had to call my in-laws. One of them had to come stay in the cabin. And I spent the entire night with the baby in the camp shower, just pressing the button, and it would be hot water and it would steam. And then when the sun came up, I packed everyone up and went home, and so, it's, but I tell you what, I'm still so glad I did it. We spent that day with the family. We went to the cabin. It increased my muscles of what I think I'm capable of for the next time. I couldn't really get much worse than that. And it could, but that was sort of the one extreme of it didn't go at all how I had planned. But I'm glad I did it, but it was not relaxing.
No, it's not relaxing. And, it's good to just not expect it to be relaxing.
Yeah.
Relaxing is for later. Relaxing is for 10 years from now,
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
So Pam, I had written, I had put in all these little spots here that were so funny. I was hoping the boys would get bored enough this summer to actually read. They didn't. Just these little things in there. Taking other people's trash is a major suburban sport. If it doesn't sound fun to you, then you haven't tried it. So I just really thoroughly enjoyed the book. Even the subtitles, Moment of Personal Clarity, I'm a Slob. It's just great. It's a fantastic book. So Pam, if people are interested in buying Why Can't We Just Play? What I did when I realized my kids were way too busy, where should they go? It's on Amazon.
It's anywhere books are sold. Most people I know get their books on Amazon. You can go to the publisher's website, which is familius.com. Right now, Familius, until August 1st, I don't know when this podcast is going to air, but until August 1st, Familius is running a discount. You get 40% off the book with the code PLAY at checkout. So
okay, I'll make sure it goes up before August 1st then. That's fantastic. And then if people are interested in this Zoom, which I know you don't have it fully baked yet, but if they're interested in this Zoom book club, should they follow you on Instagram? Do you have a newsletter?
Follow me on Instagram, Pam Lobley on Instagram. And you can message me. I already have a couple people that have done so I'll make a little list. And when I get a few, I'll set it up. And the book is on, it's on Kindle too. It's on Kindle, it's on audiobook and,
And then you have a website, www.pamlobley.
I'm going to be honest, it's not the most updated website.
It's all right.
Chalk it up to too many things going on right now.
Yeah.
You can look at my website, but it's not really, it needs to be improved.
Okay. So the best place to find you is on Instagram, and I can share that information too when it comes out, because I think it's timely. Like you said, the loneliness and isolation has just gotten worse.
And the mom guilt. I think that because we have so many choices these days, like you're constantly saying no to something because there's just so much to do. And then every time you say no, you feel guilty. It's crazy. So
it's hard.
It's hard.
Yeah, people can come and connect and commiserate and find encouragement because, all of these emotions that you felt, you talked about feeling competitive, you talked about feeling nervous, feeling panicked, all of these things came out, but the tone of the book is very uplifting, which is that, I felt all of these things, but it's okay. And it was worth it. And it's normal. And yeah. So
and laugh about it. This is the thing, like once you can accept lower your expectations and accept that a certain amount of craziness is just baked in, then let's just laugh about it. My gosh, life is so short. We're so lucky to have kids. We're so
Hmm.
lucky to have a family to love and to help grow up. And I mean, so even though there's the hard times, keeping that perspective and being able to laugh is just,
Yeah.
for me anyway, it's everything.
Yeah, and your book does such a great job of modeling that. So I think it's one every mom should read. It is
Oh,
fantastic. It'd make a great gift. I just enjoyed it so much. So, Pam, we always end our podcast with a favorite childhood memory of
oh
yours
yeah.
that's outside.
Okay, so when I was growing up, so I was growing up a long time ago in the 70s, and that was super free range. So we lived in this neighborhood where, I mean, I got to tell you, we were allowed to do everything. We just rode bikes and ran around. But I had a next door neighbor. Um, she'd gotten this bunny. I don't know if she kind of captured it from the neighborhood or if she got it from a pet store. I'm unclear. It was all white, so it seems like it must have been a purchase somehow, like an all white bunny. Anyway, her mom refused to let her have it in the house. Mom was like, we're not having a bunny in a cage in the house. So she built a cage for it in the backyard. Well, duh, the bunny got out of that cage all the time because, they can dig. And the cage was like, she was like 12. She built this cage. It was hardly like a master of engineering. So anyway, there was like a summer when all we did was chase that stupid bunny all over the neighborhood. She would come over to our house and the bunny's name was Boo Bun. Boo Bun is out. We gotta go get Boo Bun. And then we would just, and it was pointless because you're just going to catch the thing or lure him back in with lettuce and then he's going to run away again. But it gave our days like this really fun framework of chasing the bunny, getting the bunny and petting the bunny. And I don't know, it was just one of those funny childhood things that made no sense, but was just, was a rich experience.
Wow, and stuck with you for decades.
Stuck with me.
And probably just one of those things that the mom probably felt guilty that she wouldn't let the bunny inside, and really wasn't these days it's like we would probably buy the best hutch and we would help them make it, and to just kind of let it be, and
right.
It's the chaos led to the memories.
Yes. Yeah. It was that laissez-faire parenting. It's like, well, listen, if you want to build a cage, but the bunny's not coming in the house. I'll buy you some lettuce for the bunny. That's about the extent of what we're doing. And, but you know what? It worked.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Pam, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for a wonderful book. And thank you for spending this hour with us. And actually, I wanted to say that my name is Virginia because you had an Aunt Virginia.
My sister is
your
Virginia.
Sister. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she never wanted to be called Ginny. Everybody tried for a nickname, Ginny, Gigi. And this is another child. She would look at them with her little face and say, my name is Virginia, Virgiia.
I love that. It was fun to see that in there. Almost everyone I talk to, they say, oh, that was my grandma's name or my aunt's name. Or
it's a beautiful name.
Anyway, so I thought that was a fun little thing. I'd written that down. So yeah, thank you, Pam, and I'll be looking forward to the Zoom book club, and just hope everyone goes and grabs a copy of your book and really gets so much out of it, just like how I did. So thank you.
Thank you.